All right, the textbook definition for thinking is that it is manipulating and transforming information in memory. And this we're going to discuss critical and creative thinking. Critical thinking, this involves thinking reflectively, productively, and evaluating evidence. And so the discussions, that's what we're doing there. You have to use critical thinking there. You have to be actively engaged in there. Example, spanking. There was a lot of back and forth on those. Some people think it's horrible. Some people don't think it's that bad. And so you're looking critically at it, and you're looking at the evidence, and you are trying to figure it out yourself. It's actually what a lot of psychology is. Depending on your studies, how they're designed, how you do the statistics, you can kind of get an answer that you're looking for. So you, as a connoisseur of this information, you have to think critically about those studies. Did they really get the results that they claimed? Did they really use the variables that they were talking about? The statistics, did they seem a little off? So critical thinking, that's what that is. It is different from just regurgitating information. Like a multiple choice test, quizzes, midterms, things like that, that's just regurgitating stuff. A lot of multiple choice questions too, it's almost like the answers are encoded in the question. And so those are not critical thinking. They're just memorization. It's looking things up too. Also, if you're taking these tests online and you're able to you have your textbook, that's just looking stuff up. So multiple choice, that is superficial learning. Critical thinking is a deeper type of learning. All that being said, critical thinking, it is much harder to teach to people and it is much harder to evaluate. Critical thinking is a lot about a person's desire. Do they want to think about these things? It is on the decline. There's probably a lot of reasons. One being that because teachers, administrators, the government, they focus more time on doing things like multiple choice tests because it's easy. You can get a score and you go, look, here, our scores are better or our scores are worse and we need to do something about it. It's hard to put a score. It's hard to put a number on critical thinking. Again, right way versus the easy way. An easy way is just to give a kid a screen, and here it's like, oh, you'll look over this, we'll take a test. It's a lot harder to be like, what do you think about this question? Think critically about this. What do you think? That's much more difficult. Related to this is creative thinking. And so this is the ability to think in novel and unusual ways, come up with unique solutions to problems. Related to this is convergent thinking. This produces one correct answer, which is like a multiple choice test. Answer B is the right one. That is convergent thinking. Divergent thinking is trying to produce as many correct answers to the same question. As an example, how many uses can you think of for a newspaper? So that's divergent thinking. That is critical thinking. That's creative thinking. It's a really great type of question to use. But again, it's going to be hard to grade something like that. So divergent is more of a kind of a creative intelligence. Shocker, creative intelligence, it is also on the decline. And researchers think that it's going to be related to several things, but one is going to be screens. I know I keep mentioning it. I'm not a total, Luddite. I use screens myself, obviously, but there's a lot of research that there are, there's a lot of positives to them. There's also a lot of negatives to it. And one of the negatives is when you're just staring at a screen, this is a passive thing. You are not thinking about it. You are just like a receptacle for information. You're not actually thinking through it. If you just go to a lecture and you're just waiting for the professor to give you the correct answer and you're not actually thinking through it yourself, that's the same type of thing that's going to cause those, critical and the creative thinking to go down. So the tests, those are convergent. The discussions are more like, critical thinking, creative, divergent. Critical, as an example again, does the research show that spanking is the worst thing ever? And so you have to think through that. Divergent, what ways are there to deal with ADHD before trying meds? Example, related to this, there's a handout in the course modules. It's called the Skillful Psychology Students. And basically it's showing what employers are looking for when they hire people that have psychology degrees. It talks about the cognitive, communication, personal, social, technological. So some of these things we actually talk about, throughout the course. Same stuff is here, analytical thinking, critical thinking, creativity, those exact things that we just talked about. That is what employers are looking for. And so, just kind of as an FYI, as far as the discussions, the group projects, I'll talk about a little bit later on. And the other things that we do in here as well, we have the oral component. We have, working with others. We have the written part. And so, again, as an educator, trying to provide these things that employers are actually looking for, working well with others. Nowhere on here does it say that an employer is looking for somebody that can pass a multiple choice test. And so it's kind of weird We spend so much time on these tests, but as far as, actually out in the workforce, that's not necessarily what employers are looking for. Even in graduate school, I don't remember taking any multiple choice tests. I was there for 4 or 5 years. No tests like that at all. So that's why we do some of the things that we do in here with the discussions, when we're in person to do the collaborative quizzes. Maybe some of you are still doing that, the group projects. But again, it's hard. It's harder on the professors almost than it is on the students. It's a lot easier to just come in and, read a textbook and go to class. Just kind of related to this, I already have the lectures recorded for 9 through 16 because of what happened in the spring. And the tests are already created, the quizzes are already created, so I could just throw all those up there and be done with it. But again, I think that the real learning is going to happen, through the discussions, through the group projects. The things that the employers are actually looking for are going to take place outside of what you think of as a traditional learning style with the quizzes and tests and whatnot. So yeah, what's easy? What's the right thing to do? Okay, so that's it on all that stuff. Next, we'll get into metacognition, which is really interesting.